Frightful's Mountain, Chapter 5, page 50, Part 1, Frightful Peregrinates. When a light snow covered the Sahari River valley, Frightful's bird sense urged her one last time to leave or die. She took a reading on the sun's rays, listened to her internal compass, and started south. She covered only 10 miles before she turned back. She was hungry. She would find Mole. When she was over the pine woods where she had been held captive, she flew faster. Mole's farm was ahead. Speeding swiftly, she overshot the farm. It changed. The weedy fields where the game lived had been leveled and their black soil turned over in neat rows. The dense bushes along the fences, where many birds lived, had been clipped. She circled the culvert. It, too, was changed. The bushes that covered its entrance were gone. The culvert was a round, bare hole. "Cree, cree, cree," she called. Mole did not come out. Frightful circled the farm again, but did not find the yellow hound. She flew to the silo. The air was bumpy where warm currents met cold. She rode the waves to the ledge of the silo and stepped under the jutting roof. The veins of her flight feathers were split and dry. She oiled them, then snapped them back in line by running her beak down the shafts from base to tip. She let go with a flick that triggered the veins to fall neatly into place. This done, she was sleek and ready to hunt. Frightful surveyed the landscape. Even the woods were different. The leaves had fallen, and the red-tailed hawk nest was empty. The parents and young had migrated to warmer lands. Weak from hunger, she left the silo and flew back over the culvert. She waited on for Mole. The wind tossed her. She matched each burst with a twist to stay in place, but Mole did not come out. Behind her, purple-red and blue-gray clouds forecast rain and wind. It was urgent that she find food. Swooping along fence rows to scare up game, she searched intently. Nothing stirred. Twilight sent her back to the silo ledge, her hunger raging. Hours later, she was awakened by thunder shaking the old silo. The dark night was lit by flashes of lightning. With each flash, she saw dancing trees and wild water pouring across the barnyard. It gushed out of Mole's culvert. The flashes became almost continuous, then stopped. The rain pummeled, swished, pattered, and was over. She went back to sleep. At sunrise, the sky was yellow, white, and pale blue, the colors of a rain-cleansed day. The woods and farm sparkled with freshness. Frightful flew over the culvert and waded on. Mole did not make an appearance. She was growing weaker. Spotting a distant harvest cornfield, she flew to a tree at its edge. She waited for something to move. Finally, she caught a mouse. The storm had driven the bigger game into their shelters and burrows. In the late afternoon, Frightful flew back to the culvert. Out of the sky plunged a bald eagle. He aimed right at her. She back-flipped, and he missed. The eagle beat his wings and got above her for another strike. He dove. She rolled to her back, threw up her feet, and raked him with her sharp talons. He flew up to strike again. Frightful dropped to the ground, and as the eagle dove once more, ran into Mole's culvert. He lost sight of her. He climbed, circled the culvert once, then boarded an air current that carried him off toward the Hudson River. He would spend the winter fishing there. Safe inside the culvert, Frightful panted from fright, then quickly became calm. Bird emotions are intense, but short. She glanced at her surroundings. The gushing storm water of last night had slowed to a trickle. She drank. Refreshed, she walked to the mouth of the culvert, saw no eagle, and sprang onto her wings. She climbed high and fast over the tilled field. When she was high enough to feel safe, she leveled off. An undulating wind rocked her southward over a brushy meadow. She came down on a fence post and watched for food. She was growing feeble as hunger weakened her. Suddenly, she was in deep trouble. The sun was setting. In mere minutes, the light would be too low for her to find a roost. She flew up to the last light. It illuminated the bell tower of the abandoned church at Beaver Corners. She headed for it. Winging to its weathered and rotting peak, she landed gracefully. The churchyard was thick with weeds. A farm and a woods lay nearby. She had been here. She shifted her weight nervously as the condor face of the man who had taken her from Sam flashed into her visual memory. She felt fear, but it was too late in the day to move on. She forgot him. Snow patches lay under trees where the sun did not fall. A migrating Cooper's hawk dropped into the nearby woods for the night. Like Frightful, he too was late. The sun set. The sky turned a twilight purple. Frightful could only see light and dark shapes. She flew down to the sill of one of the 4 glassless windows in the church bell tower. Lifting her wings, she walked into a square, moldy room and jumped up onto a rusted bell lying on its side. Every window was black with night. She shook her feathers and, weak from hunger, fell into a restless sleep. Last night's thunderstorm had preceded a cold front. The temperature dropped below freezing, and the migration of the birds stopped. The robins and wood thrushes and other small birds that navigated by the stars at night fluttered down into the trees. They sought the warmth of the wind-breaking woods to wait for the cold front to pass. At dawn, they teetered among the trees. They called to each other and ate insects numbed by the cold. It was also too cold for hunger. Weak and frightful to fly on her way. She must eat. She took off from the tower and flew out over a weedy meadow. A rabbit jumped up and ran toward a thicket of spiny hawthorn trees. Hunger sharpened her skills, and Frightful was upon it before she reached the fortress. No migrating eagle passed overhead. No barred owls saw her. She ate, her strength returning quickly. The leftovers she carried back to the bell tower. The cold did not let up for days. Frightful and the thrushes stayed on at Beaver Corners. In the middle of one night the warmth returned. Wings rustled like taffeta as the birds lifted themselves out of the woods and continued their migration. Frightful opened her eyes. Ribbons of birds were flying across the yellow face of the moon. The birds were navigating by the shining light of stars. In the morning, the haze of an Indian summer day erased trees, fields, and roads. Frightful could not see well enough to fly. She shifted her feet restlessly. The one mountain among thousands, the one tree among millions, and Sam were coming more vividly to mind the longer she lingered. On an unusually warm day in early November, she stepped to the open sill of the bell tower. She had caught no food for 2 days. She must move south. Frightful tried to read the angle of the sun's rays, but a blue-gray haze cut them out, and she could not get their message. She turned her head from right to left. She felt tiny iron particles in her brain lining up with the Earth's magnetic field. She needed both the sun's rays and the magnetic field to plot her course. She had only one. She took off anyway. Frightful headed southwest. She flew over the town of Bern and the steeples of North Blenheim. She chased a night heron up the Sahari River, lost him, pursued a mallard duck, and lost her. She was not trained for birds. She stopped chasing them and came down to rest on a spruce tree in the banks of the Sahari Reservoir. The air was dense with moisture. Clouds thickened and darkened the sky. Around noon they let go. Rain poured down. Tree trunks became rivers and spruce needles waterfalls. Frightful was her own tent. Water ran off her head and shoulders, her beak, and her tail. No wetness seeped through her feathers. When the rain blurred her eyes, she cleared them by flashing her nictitating membranes like windshield wipers. She sat calmly in the deluge. A lost great blue heron took shelter on a limb below her. Frightful looked at it only because it moved. The bird was too big for her to take. A wind hit the forest in strong gusts in the afternoon. Clouds circled clockwise. The edge of the last tropical storm of the year had twisted up from the south and was drenching the Sahari Valley and reservoir. Rain fell for 2 nights and 3 days. Frightful dropped lower on the spruce tree and waterproofed her feathers with the oil from her tail gland.